Hi, my name is Mary Dirksen, and I'm one of the authors in the transformational anthology called Pebbles in the Pond, Transforming the World One Person at a Time. My transformation took place with an incident that happened many years ago, and I wrote about it in my chapter that I'm about to read for you. I titled that chapter Heart Choice. It's about finding promise and purpose through pain and trauma. My worst nightmare visited me the afternoon I received a certified letter in the mail. The document was one page stating that my children desired to live at their father's address. My daughter had just reached her 13th birthday that very weekend. My son would be 15 in another 4 weeks. Both were of legal age to choose which parent they wanted to live with. I looked at their signatures for long moments, attempting to find some sign of forced handwriting or forgery. I knew they couldn't possibly have signed that petition on their own. They must have been threatened, or even worse, bribed. But my children were not with me. Their father refused to bring them home the night before, telling me that they didn't want to go home and they didn't need to speak with me. After a short phone conversation, I braced myself for another battle in court. I seemed to be in court regularly over the past 2 years since our divorce was finalized. It was a long, strenuous night for me. Fear gnawed at my stomach throughout my restless sleep. My pain was unfathomable. I felt crushed and defeated. I was afraid, ashamed, and humiliated. I felt guilty. I combed my memory looking for all that I did so wrong to make them want to leave. I was angry and I blamed others. For weeks I was tortured with scenes of slow, brutal deaths by my hands of my ex-husband, his wife, and even his mother, the culprits of convincing my children to leave my home. In my thoughts, I blamed my family and friends for not helping me talk to the kids about wanting to stay with me. I felt helpless and alone, and at times I wanted to even die. I wondered what others would think of me, because after all, children didn't leave their mothers unless she was a very bad one. 6 weeks went by before I had to appear in the court with my former husband to hear the amended custody arrangement and granting of my visitation schedule. That also turned out to be the first time that I saw my children since the weekend that they left for their dads and didn't come back. No words were spoken as they stood there next to their stepmother, yet our eyes met momentarily from across the hall. I thought a bullet pierced my heart. Why did she come? It was none of her business. And certainly the kids didn't need to be put through this. How could she and my husband be so inconsiderate of the kids? I had written a lengthy letter to my children. I am sure God helped me write it because I was inspired with words to take away any guilt from them in making the adult decision and being put through a situation where they had to choose between their parents. I wanted them to know how much that I missed them, but not to be concerned about me. I would be fine, and I really did understand that they needed time with their dad. I saved that letter for them for the first time that they came to visit, and they could take it home with them and read it in private. The letter was also therapeutic for me. I really had to trust God now, that He would take care of them and send them back to me when they needed me. I trusted Him to allow them to get what they went there for, and I prayed for peace in their hearts and in their minds. In turn, I started to have a little peace in mind. I began to pray, and I meant it, something that I hadn't done since before high school. I didn't believe in God, but I needed him. Visitations granted me an appreciation for my time with my children, something that I took for granted before. I recalled all the times that I complained to myself about how overwhelmed that I was taking the responsibilities of being a mother. Back then, before the divorce, I felt like I had the entire world on my shoulders. I was not only taking care of my children, but also my husband, our home, my job, our bills, and on and on. As a single mother, I didn't have any money or time to do anything with the kids. All of a sudden, I had both. My weekends with my children were completely focused on them. We started bonding. As time passed, my anger eased. I found ways to bury some of my strong emotions, much like I did when I was in childhood, and also in my marriage, with periodic outbursts from time to time over petty issues, just to release my stress. I became a workaholic. I enrolled in college. I became obsessed with my plants and animals. In the meantime, my children grew as I did in our relationship with each other. We took nothing about our family for granted. By the time I earned my bachelor degree, my children were grown and each had a child of their own. I no longer needed my job to support them, and I began thinking about myself, something that was very strange for me since I always was taking care of everybody else's needs first. I had been programmed since childhood to think of other people's needs. Otherwise, I was being selfish and self-absorbed, and that was sinful. But now, it was my turn to truly live. So I quit my job, and a year later, I moved across the country to Florida, 1,000 miles away from my friends and my family. The entire time I lived in Florida, I felt as though I had a guardian angel watching over me. One thing after another challenged me, yet there was always a savior nearby. When I was involved in an accident that rendered my car inoperative, a person that I had recently met offered to let me stay with her so she could take me to work for the next few days. Another person I had just met loaned me his car for a few days later after that, until mine was out of the garage. Countless other people were there for me as I found myself stranded in helpless situations. It was as though it was through one of my friends while I was in Florida that I started attending a church, very different from my Catholic upbringing. One of the prayers that baffled me more than any of the others had to do with being thankful for our pain. I had had so much. It was several years later before I understood that prayer, and that was the beginning of my change in thought and my change in attitude. After 3 years in Florida, circumstances arose that forced me to return home. I was broke, and I had to take an hourly position for an income until I could decide on what my next move forward in life was going to be. I found myself paying more attention to all the apparent coincidences that had taken place in my life, and understood that they were nothing short of miracles. And they continued. My new job provided an opportunity to go back to school, as well as become an active participant in a number of groups within my company, the school I attended, and the community where I resided. My network expanded quickly. After acquiring my MBA, a few promotions, holding officer positions in several organizations, many hours of volunteer work in the community, and extracurricular activities at work, such as teaching and safety committees, I was still unfulfilled. I knew there had to be more for me in this life, I continued studying, reading, attending workshops, retreats, and classes. I was becoming more and more spiritual, taking the discovery of myself and truth to a higher level. I was beginning to put together everything that happened in my life as though it was a puzzle, and each event was a piece of it. I was remembering the pain of the greatest challenges and the circumstances of the darkest intervals, and how they pushed me forward into going back to school, building my finances, and strengthening me. I considered the miracles, such as my close relationship with my children and my grandchildren, in spite of the geographical distance, my move out of state, and learning to venture alone, complete with an awareness of a divine presence with me always. I was in a predicament. I was discontent with my job, yet I was earning more money than I had on any other job that I'd previously held, and I felt trapped. I reflected on my journey of heartbreak and blessings and saw that the path where it was heading. I was destined to make a difference in this world. I began to think about my options. Was I going to follow my heart and make my life happen, or continue as a victim and wait for life to happen to me? In my mind, I heard Wayne Dyer's words, "Let go and let God." So with a deep breath, I chose to trust my heart and listen to what I felt God was telling me. So I hired a business coach, and I found my purpose using my skills, education, and most of all, the knowledge that I had gained from all of my pain. I left my hourly job and became an entrepreneur, serving as a life coach for mothers who have lost custody of their children. I intend to be their voice. If you would like to read more about me, or read some of my blogs, or participate in my newsletter, and get more involved with helping mothers who have lost custody of their children, please contact me at www.marydirksen.com. It's marydirksen.com, or you can email me at info.marydirksen.com. Thank you for listening to my chapter.